All right, good evening and welcome to Sunday Evening Coffee. I'm Brian, and the woman who just tried to hit me in the face is my beautiful wife, Crystal. Say hello, baby.
Hey, guys.
And down on the other end of the table, Jason and Jennifer Zach. Say what?
You can barely see
That
Jason. He's
was
so skinny.
aggressive
So
clapping.
skinny.
Can you see your claps right there on it? Anyway,
It's all
I'm
good.
Travis and Jennifer Haley tonight. Say
Yes.
what's up?
Hi. What's up?
Hey, folks.
So we've all been coffeeed up. We've had some Cubans. Let's see, who all had a Cuban? Y'all three had a Cuban.
I did.
Yes.
They're amazing.
And Cameron had a Cuban.
A BLC.
She had to get Cubaned up.
Brian Long Cuban.
Brian Long.
So we had some Cubans, and we've got some new coffee tonight. And I talked about it on Facebook Live last week, but you can see here it's called Grizzly Bean Coffee Company, and their website is grizzlybean.com. And this is Sawtooth, so I think he's going to have some different blends. But Adam Cruz, my buddy, he hunts a lot, and he wanted a coffee that was strong and that was bold and that didn't have a bunch of junk in it. So he developed that and brought us a bag Friday to try. So you guys go check it out because it is really, really
It's
good.
good. And I love when somebody wants something and they can't find it, so
Yep.
they just do it
They
themselves.
do it.
They
That's
go
right.
get it,
Perfect.
you know?
Good concept.
That's
Yeah,
good.
right. It's so it's really, really good. We're not going to spend a lot of time up there. I don't think there's much going on current event wise. Anything that we need to talk about? Debates tomorrow night. Trump and Hillary. Just
Yeah.
so. What are you doing?
I'm Snapchatting someone.
So we're recording a video and a podcast, and you're
No, it's
Snapchatting.
good. It's a good one.
So there you go. So anyway, and just so you know, this is probably going to be 2 episodes because it's a long story and there's a lot to cover.
Yep.
So we won't waste any time other than be sure to go to the website, sundayeveningcoffee.com, and the email address is sundayeveningcoffee@gmail.com. We did do a challenge last week, do something for your spouse that is out of the ordinary.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that I did that, to be honest with you. Did I do anything out of the ordinary for you? That one thing, we can't talk about that.
Easy now.
Let me see.
What was that one thing?
You made me a pizza. Oh, wait, no, you didn't. No, nothing.
Love keeps no record of wrong. I'm positive that's in there.
Did y'all? Did you do your own challenge?
We
They did a new one this week, Jason.
yeah,
was
our
talking about
new one
today.
is do
Barter
it
for something.
No, well, barter for something is we still got to do that one, but do a chore that your spouse doesn't like to do.
Oh.
And so we worked it out where I cleaned the kitchen and she did the bathroom. So she hasn't done
Which
that.
I've yet to do.
But the kitchen is
Oh, wait,
done.
they're already next week.
But Jason not only cleaned the kitchen, he organized it.
Organized.
Here's the thing. I know Jennifer
Yes.
enough. She'll barter her way around the bathroom.
Yeah, I'm waiting
So
for
you're
it.
cleaning the bathroom
He doesn't know yet.
So that's a good one. Let's make our challenge for the listeners too. So you guys do something for your spouse, do a chore for them. If they don't like to do it, you do it for them.
Yeah.
So, and let us know what those things are. So anyway, without further ado, I'm not even going to give you any kind of introduction other than we love you guys. We've spent, we've known you for what, 5 years now, probably 5, 6 years.
Oh, closely for 5 years.
Yeah.
But
Probably
I don't even know.
longer than
Yeah.
It feels like forever, which
Yeah.
is amazing.
So we've shared meals and coffee and everything else. Haircuts,
life,
Jen,
life, real life.
Jen was definitely my hair cutter extraordinaire for a number of years. So, and she's not doing that now, so I won't plug you for doing that. But she does a great job. But anyway, so Trav and Jen have an amazing story, and I won't say that their story is done because I think we all still continue to live in our story and we figure things out day by day. But thank you guys for coming and sharing because I know it's hard and I know it's probably going to be tough and probably emotional. So we'll roll through it and we'll get through it. But you guys,
Absolutely. Yeah, we're excited too.
Yeah, we're glad to start sharing it. And our story's not done. I'm glad
Yeah.
you said that because I think a lot of people can say, well, here's where we were and now we're all better. And we're kind of a different couple because we're not there. I believe that we will one day be able to not struggle with the things that we're struggling with or the battles we're facing now, but we're kind of still going through it. But part of our healing and part of our getting through it is sharing it. Like
Absolutely.
this helps us. And I hope just from us sharing, somebody else is going to have the courage to speak up.
Absolutely.
Or say, I'm not alone. Or,
Right.
oh my God, I thought I was the only
I'm not on the
one.
island
Or,
by myself.
yeah, and
And let me interject one thing
Yeah.
too. That from the standpoint of being very involved in church. Travis was an usher. Jennifer sang on the worship team. We've done lots of drama together, skits and things, and Jennifer works for the church. And so I think there's a lot of misconception when you see somebody that's very involved in church and they're doing a lot of things for God, that you expect everything is perfect in their marriage.
Yeah.
And that's not the case.
Yeah.
Right.
Or their life, or they're on the stage, or she does the video announcements, so she just must have it all together. She would never understand what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And I think for a long time, Travis and I wore that, let me make myself look perfect at church, because that's what I think everybody has to do. But we're just ready to take off the mask and to be seen for who we really are.
Yeah.
And just be, it's okay that I have this past. It doesn't make me who I am.
That's right.
Like, God still loves me. Jesus loves me. I'm accepted. So
Yeah, while not making excuses
no
for
excuses
anything.
for where we've messed up or things we've done wrong, but just to see that there's glory and there's redemption on the other side of it, if you're willing to kind of open up and let God get in there.
Yeah.
Okay. You want me to just start telling
Yeah,
that story?
absolutely. First, before you tell us how long you've been together, how long you've been married, just a snippet of
A snapshot, because we'll get into it a little bit.
Well, our family sort of knew one another growing up.
Yeah, our dads were best buds.
So we saw one another a handful of times growing up. I knew her grandparents, better than I did her.
Yeah.
So we sort of knew of each other, and then I guess we sort of re-met at Cornerstone.
Church, Cornerstone.
Yeah.
And
she was actually engaged.
2007.
Engaged to be married.
Go ahead, tell the part that you like to say.
You mean where I walked up to the guy and was like, "Hey man, this is my woman. You're gonna have to." No, that's not how it happened.
That's not what happened.
I like this.
I was going to say, really? I didn't know that.
She really was
I
engaged.
really was
though.
engaged,
Yeah.
but Trav didn't smack down on him or anything. But yeah, so we kind of got reconnected in 2007 and then got married in 2008. So we've been married for 8.5 years.
Yes.
And have 2 little girls, Nora who's 6.5 and Gwyneth who's 2.5, and that's where we are. Okay.
Been nothing but roses and sunshine.
Exactly. Just
in
In
church.
the story.
I grew up, that's kind of hard because my parents got divorced when I was little, and so I grew up every once in a while going to church, enough where I knew God but not knew who God really was.
Yeah.
I knew God existed, and my mom would always tell us what you don't do. So I was kind of in and out of church and really started going to church faithfully when I was in high school. When I moved in, I'll talk about it a little bit. Yeah, so I had a really messed up concept of who I thought God was, but I grew up around enough church to know something.
Yeah.
and I started going to church 9 months before I was born. So
There you go.
Yeah, you grew up pretty faithfully. So we've only done this a couple times, shared our story, so we'll just do the best we can. So I think I'm going to talk a little bit about me, and then Trav will talk a little bit about him from pasts, and then we'll go into what's been going on the last 2 years. So when I was 5 or 6, my parents divorced, and my dad kind of left. He thought, my dad goes to church with us. He's a great guy. He really thought he was doing the best thing because my mom was starting to deal with a lot of emotional issues and blowing up and kind of just going crazy, and my dad thought it was because of him. So he thought, well, if I'll leave, the girls will be safe. So we saw him every other weekend and 2 weekends every summer, but I think we talked to him on the phone once a week, but he was not there. And my mom has a lot of mental issues that she did not know about. She still struggles. We have a really limited relationship, and she was really abusive. I think it's because she just didn't know how to handle herself.
Sure.
She came from an abused past, and I've worked through a lot of stuff, but there was a lot of physical abuse, emotional abuse, and intellectual abuse, just really degrading. My mom did drugs. She used a lot of alcohol and drugs, and she used to take us on drug deals with her, in the car. We used to bring her tray of pot and papers. It was so, we didn't know there was you just smoke weed, that's what you do. And also, even though we lived with my mom, it was almost like my mom kept us to win a battle with my dad, but I don't know that she really wanted to have us there. She would lock her door and tell us not to bother her. And I mean, I have memories of being so little that my hand was as big as the doorknob, just trying to see if like she was in there, and she would just, I mean, we would put ourselves to sleep. So it's me, and I have a little sister, Stephanie. She goes to church. She's awesome, but she's a year and a half younger. And so just a lot of, I don't even think I realized until the last 2 years when Travis and I have been going through what we've been going through, and I've been going to counseling, and how much craziness was my childhood.
Because it's your normal. It's
Yeah.
I did not know.
Yeah.
And my mom is also a hoarder. Like, she's a hoarder. She hoards things and animals.
I remember when you told me this, and I
Yeah.
was like, I want to go see. Like,
Yeah.
I can't, because of my brain, I
It's-
can't wrap around it.
It is like,
well, even when you see it,
you just
you can't.
Yeah.
And it's like the show. Like, if anyone has ever watched Hoarders, that is what I grew up in. But I didn't know there was anything wrong with it until I was in 6th grade. I went over to a friend's house, because I never had friends over, but I didn't know why. Well, and I went over to a girl's house because we had to work on a science project together. And I walked in her house. I was like, "Where's all your stuff?" And she was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "All the stuff that's usually like in the floor and in piles. And where did you put it all before I came over?" She was like, "This is the way my house always looks." And I had this realization that like, oh, like I'm different.
Maybe
like,
it's not normal.
Yeah, it's not normal. So not only am I trying to deal with craziness, then I realize, oh, I'm not, what I'm feeling is right, because I'm not normal.
And so were you basically raising Stephanie?
Yeah. Like, there were times when we were little, my mom, she just mentally was not stable. And so she would wake us up. I remember one specific time. It was probably 3 o'clock in the morning. We were in 1st or 2nd grade, like Nora's age, like, you know, 6.5, 7. She stood at the bottom steps and screamed and yelled for us to come downstairs right now. So sleepy girls, we get down there. And it was because we had loaded the dishes in the dishwasher the wrong way. And she took them all out and threw them on the floor and made Stephanie and I reload the dishwasher the correct way, which was just her way. And then we could go back and get in the bed.
Wow.
And then we would get up for school and get ourselves ready. And then on top of that, my mom was a hoarder. She hoarded animals. Our house was dirty. Smelled bad. So I was also picked on really bad in elementary school and middle school. Just, kids are mean.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I always had on hand-me-down clothes and old clothes, and I smelled bad. And I can remember falling asleep in class because my mom was yelling in the middle of the night, or we wouldn't go to bed, and then kids were making fun of me because I smelled bad or I was falling asleep. And so now I just want to tell people, like, you never know what people are going through. You know, they might smell, they might look different, but you don't know what's happening at home. You have no idea what they're going through. And now we work with the youth, and I have such a different outlook on these kids that everybody else says are strange or are dressing different, and I'm like, wow, what are they going through? Like, what is happening in their life you don't know about? Because I was that kid.
Right.
Every day, picked on, left out.
So did you see your mom have lots of men in and out?
No, she really
No.
didn't. And if she did, I don't know if we saw it.
Yeah.
And actually, maybe that's not true, because I think I remember a couple of times being out places with my mom, and my mom would be sitting on some guy's lap or something, like, and I never knew these people. It was such a weird life. But I think because of the condition of our house, like, nobody was coming at our house. You couldn't come in our house. Just at the time I didn't know it, but now I'm like, oh, like nobody was coming over.
Did you live with your mom until you were an adult?
I lived with my mom until I was 13. And when I was 13, well, my dad didn't know all this was going on with my mom. He didn't know the condition of her house. He did not know about the abuse or the drugs or alcohol, because my mom would tell us, if anybody finds out, they're going to take you away from me and I'll never see you again. So even though we probably didn't realize it was so unhealthy, that's our mom. And like dad already left.
Yeah.
And this is all we got.
So that's the stability you have left.
Yeah,
Right.
even though it's
Whatever
crazy,
worth.
jacked up,
Yeah.
this is like, oh, if we lose our mom, you know. So no. And finally, when we were 13, we told my dad, and he was like, he was broken. Like, he just broke down and cried because he didn't know, and he felt like leaving. and what he did was the best thing for us. And then all this time, it's just been hell. And my mom, we used to get so angry and yell and scream and would always threaten, do you want to go live with your dad? And finally, when I was 13, I said, yes, I do.
Please.
And she looked at me and she said, you're never leaving. She was like, you'll never leave. I'll never let you leave. So what we had to do was, with my dad, we organized a kidnapping. When we would go and stay with my dad every 2 weeks during the summer, we would take extra clothes and leave them at my dad's house. And finally, one Wednesday night, he told my mom that he was coming to pick us up to go shoe shopping. So she let us go, and while we were gone, my mom was served with papers for custody, and we didn't go back.
Wow.
So it was awful,
still is a
though.
lot.
It
Yeah.
was awful. I was 13, terrified. I feel like I've betrayed my mom, but I know I have to get out. It was awful. I can still remember exactly where, because we sat at a gas station with my dad in the truck, you know, while he was kind of on the phone with the lawyer saying the papers have been delivered, you can take them home, and just so much trauma that a kid should not have to go through. So we moved in with my dad, but I need to back up a little bit because one big part of my story is when I was 7 or 8 at a uncle's house of mine, my sister and I used to play hide and seek and things, and their house was kind of semi-hoarded too. They had rooms that were just like storage rooms, and we used to play in there. And I think I was probably 7 or 8, I found a box of pornography, magazines and things. And I remember being young and not knowing exactly what I was looking at, but every time I went over to their house, I wanted to go in that room and look in that box. Like something about that was appealing. And I think it just, something about looking at those images, although I understand now what it was inside of me, it was that feel-good hormone, that craving to be loved and accepted, something that, but I didn't know then. And pornography was something that I continued to struggle with until I was 22 or 23. Pornography and masturbation, and I know that's something that we don't like to say a lot in church, and
Masturbation. We can all say
pornography and masturbation. And
On 3, everybody.
and I think I just have a real passion to change that, because and the crazy thing is before Travis and I have gone through what we've gone through the last 2 years, I would have never told you that it was an issue for me. I was so deceived, and I had so locked up that box. I would have said, yeah, it was something I probably looked at a couple times, and but it was no big deal. But going through what we've gone through, having to kind of open myself up and look at myself and write things down and be honest about where I came from, then I wrote down, and you see this pattern. I'm like, oh my goodness, for 15 years, this was an active struggle that I kept going back to over and over and over again. I'm like, this was a problem. This was a big deal.
Well, and I think probably the reality is, until you give it a name and address it, it probably would have always been there and could have flared back up at any point throughout your life.
And the only reason that I did address it is because I would recognize, because when I got into my late teens, early 20s, I would get into real relationships. So I wasn't going for the pornography and masturbation because I had a real person.
You replace it.
Yeah. What I realized through all of that is I had this craving for intimacy. To be loved and wanted. Yes. Well, not until I was 17. So, but I craved, there was a hole that only God needed to fill. But the world has a lot of fakes for what it looks and temporary.
And it feel good. I mean, it's immediate.
Yeah.
And you kind of refer back to that probably from your safe place.
Yeah.
You got your whole life, it's all chaotic, and then that's your safe place, this feel good.
Yeah.
Kind of back in a different mind, different circumstances.
Yeah.
That it just made you seem like this. I'm out of my hell of what I've been going through
for this
That's a
moment.
safe place.
Well, and you control that.
Yeah.
Where you have no control over the rest of your life, you can control.
Yes.
I can control what I'm looking
And
at.
that's
I can control what I do with it.
huge part of my past makeup from coming from abuse is that I had to control everything.
Yeah.
Literally, I thought I would die if I didn't. So for survival, I'm control. I'm And with
Which
Stephanie.
makes it super fun with
Oh my
Travis.
God. Forget Travis. Super fun with myself. I'm like, oh my gosh. But even with Stephanie, like my younger sister, there were so many times I literally would put her behind me or tell her, go upstairs, I'm going to take care of this, you know, with mom.
Yeah.
So I really felt like I had to control everything. So I think you're right. That was one area where I was in charge of it. I was feeling good. And they say, like, the power, I think it's, like, the power of an orgasm is, like, the most strong drug. Like, heroin comes close, but that dopamine you get and that release of that high of chasing it, and it is crazy. And I think that's why Satan uses it. It has such a trap. And according to our culture and our world, it's normal and it's easy to get.
It's no big deal.
No big deal.
No big deal.
Okay. So I continued to struggle with that until early 20s, but I didn't really get over it. I just shut it and replaced it with real people. I never wanted to be without a relationship or a person. And then when we moved in with my dad when I was 13, we started going to church faithfully. There was a youth group. I loved it, but I didn't really get church because I thought going to church on Sunday, doing what you're supposed to do, but then you live your own life during the week.
Yeah.
Like, I'm good because I'm going to church. I love my youth group. I know all the songs. I got friends, but I'm just still doing whatever I want Monday through Friday. And then I'll probably get saved again on Wednesday night in youth group. So even though I was in church, I was still like having sex with my boyfriends and drinking and partying. I also got into going to clubs and drinking alcohol and just like I was the person who at 3 a.m. when the clubs closed, I like wanted to find another club. I didn't want to go home.
Yeah.
I had hid all this stuff and I was finding ways to numb it and hide it. And the sad thing is that so many people don't realize is that you just wake up the next morning and you still have all the crap that you took with you to the club.
Yeah.
And a new little pile on top
A new
of it.
pile, a new pile of regrets on top of it. And this never satisfies. Leaves you just emptier and wanting more and more and more. And that's what the world does. But I think my biggest beliefs from Satan, the biggest lies through my whole life were that I'm not important and I'm no one's first choice. And the second one was, if anyone knew who I really am and all the things that I've done, I won't belong. Like, I can't tell people. So I started coming to Cornerstone in 2004.
And just a second, that's Satan's biggest stronghold over us.
Huge.
If he can make you stay quiet about what you're dealing with by telling you, nobody's going to understand. Nobody's going to be okay with it. As soon as you vocalize that, you're done.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to love you.
Yes. I've been telling people lately that Satan loves secrets.
Yeah.
Like, if he can keep you trapped in a secret, he has you. Not he thinks he does. He does.
He does.
And I'm just no more secrets.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is no more. I don't want to wear the pretty church face mask. And I'm good at it because I've learned how to be really good at looking good and playing the part. And I don't want to do that anymore.
Well, it's the most dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
You know, we've talked about lots of times. We learn how to speak Christianese. We learn how to, I'm good. Praise God, and I can raise my hands and I can worship, but I'm dying on the inside. And people never know that because we're scared to talk about it.
Right.
And so, bravo for saying, hey, you know what? No, I'm not okay.
Well, especially if you're in some capacity of leadership or you really feel like I have this sort of
Can't say anything.
I have this sort of standard, and again, not to make an excuse, but to say I have this I have to live up to, which on one hand we all are called as Christians to to live up to a standard, to a different standard than the world. But how we get there, I think, there's the saying, fake it till you make it. Some things, you can't fake. You have to be real on some level.
Yeah.
Or you just fake it forever and you're not really making anything because you're staying right where you're at.
Yeah.
You're never moving out of it.
Yeah. So before I started coming to Cornerstone, though, I got into a relationship with a guy. I didn't really like him. Thinking about it now.
Is this Mr. Engagement when you met?
Yes, this is who I was engaged to. And I think what happened was I just thought, from my beliefs, I'm not important. I'm no one's first choice. This guy's giving me attention. He likes me. Nobody else is going to want me.
I better latch
especially
onto
from
it.
my past and what I've done and where I've been through. So, and he was just unhealthy. He's maybe better now, I don't know, but he was really insecure. I think now if we don't open up and fix where we are inside, even though we desire something better, you end up in the same exact place where you were because that's all you know. You don't know how to do anything different. And so I can remember the night he asked me to marry him. Yesterday I was like, okay. I'm like,
Ew.
Got nothing else going
I
on.
was like,
It's fine.
Do you have a ring?
I was just thinking, I was like, that wasn't really as magical as I really thought it would be. Okay, sure. All right. It's like, we've been together for 5 years. I guess this is the next step. This is just what you do. So, okay. So that was in 2002. We got together. I started coming to Cornerstone. I thought we were going to Cornerstone. I started coming to Cornerstone with my family in 2004. And I came for 3 years without going to a class or getting involved. I just came, sat in on the weekend, and left. But it was the first church. I remember the first weekend we came. It was the first church where I was sitting there, like on the edge of my seat, and when Pastor was like, and we're done, I was like, no, it can't be done. Are you kidding me? I didn't fall asleep one time this whole time. I've like really listened to you today. You cannot be done. Like, you need to talk more.
I'm bringing my notepad next week.
Yeah, it was like the first church, even though I wasn't ready to like jump in. It was the first church I was like, wow, something is different about this. Like, he's really, really willing to be real. Like, he's telling me real stuff. So I was still kind of getting those truths enough to break off the engagement that I didn't like. We were supposed to get married in January of 2007, and in December of 2006, I called it off.
Wow.
So,
No reason to give him a long time to worry about it.
I know it's less than a month and all, but we had to send regrets. We had to send gifts back.
Wow.
It was not pleasant experience. It's really you. So I'm sorry. But then, so I started January of 2007. I was like, I need a change. That was really hard, and it felt good to let it go. So started coming to classes in 2007, and I was in the young adults. And so that's when we still had Saturday and Sunday night. So Travis was in the Saturday night young adults. I was in Sunday, but we would do events together. So that's kind of where Trav and I met. And I think what I want to say is, even January when I started coming to church, I had, asked God to, take back over. But I still just closed the box on my whole past. I didn't tell anybody about the abuse. I didn't tell anybody about my mom or dad or any of the pornography or anything. I just closed that box. I was like, oh, well, I'm good now. I'm coming to church.
Fine. So the box is done. I don't need to talk about
I
it.
can just scoot that over there, bury it a little
Under the
bit.
rug.
Yeah, just bury that box of all the stuff that I did, and I'll be fine now. So Trav and I started dating and got married, and I think maybe before we get into our marriage stuff, I'll give Trav some talk time.
So then
That's
she
all
married
right.
me, and everything's been good. So good podcast.
Fixed it all.
Glad we had this podcast.
Thanks for
Good.
having us.
And, thanks a lot.
If you never got
So,
your gift back,
yeah.
then call Jennifer.
Oh gosh.
I'm keeping my chafing dish.
I'm so sorry. I have a crystal pie dish. I know.
So I'll go over a little bit of my past. Like I said, I started going to church 9 months before I was born. However, I was born out of wedlock. My mom, my dad sort of was out of the picture until I was about 3, and then my mom and dad got married.
Oh, wow.
So, growing up, there was always, seemed like something there as far as between them where, marriage, looking back on it, of course, as a kid, you don't really have anything to compare to. So, but looking back on it, I can see, just where they struggled in marriage and eventually when I was 15, they were divorced. And I'm going to skip around a little bit here.
You do you.
That's
I'll
right.
do me. But growing up, I was in church, but there were several events that I think shaped and molded me, some in a positive way, but I'll talk more about the negative ones, as it relates sort of to the topic today. But when I was 5, there was a friend of my dad who I was molested by. And it was a single, isolated event, but still something that... And then my dad didn't believe me that happened. So that was something that really, I think, had a negative effect on me, definitely. And then another issue when I was growing up, I had 2 older cousins who, I was like their little brother. They were feeding me mud pies and, dragging me through the dirt. And when I was 8 years old, I was exposed to pornography. And so that's, so from that time, that's when I started, experimenting with myself and of course, I didn't have a regular pornography stash, but any time it was available or I knew where some was, that's I would go to it. So then growing up, after I was 15 was when my parents divorced, and I really had, before that time, I had been involved in the youth group at our church, and was really just fired up about God. I had we went on a few church retreats, and I had some experiences with God that were just incredible. I would even say there was one point that I was filled with the Holy Spirit, and I went to a Baptist church, so they didn't really know, what it was.
Whoa, I have an experience.
They were asking him, "Are you okay?
Yeah.
Are you all right? Are you sick?"
Well, it was during a worship service, and I just must have been 13 or so, and it was during worship service, and I just was overwhelmed. It was nothing that, I didn't have control over, but I was just overwhelmed with God's presence. Yeah. That's the only way I know to describe it. Mm-hmm. And so I went to the bathroom, and I was speaking in tongues. Wow. and I went to the restroom, and guy came in and was like, "You okay, man?" Like, yeah,
I didn't know you speak Spanish.
Yeah, right. But I was just crying and just overwhelmed, and so that's the only way I know how to describe that. And looking back on it, that's what I say happened at that point.
So God was very real in your life.
So God was very real. I had, aside from any sort of, that was the most objective thing, was my own experience there. And you can get into, well, that was just an emotional whatever, but it was real to me. So, and so at school, I went to a private school, and we had, spiritual emphasis week and chapel every Tuesday. And so I carried this, sort of Christian title at school. I got best Christian attitude on the soccer team, and stuff like that, all those accolades every middle schooler strives for. So anyhow, but then when I was 15, my parents divorced, and and my dad, there began sort of the split at home, where my dad started sleeping, upstairs, and started going back to our old church. And I was plugged in at this new church we'd been going to. And I even remember at one point my dad, trying to physically force me to get in the truck, because he felt like the other church had a better, biblical theology or whatever it was. He thought that was the better church. And I disagreed. So at one point he was literally going to make me go to the other church, and I just blew up, and cussed at him, and ran back in the house, and so that was kind of a big scene. But I think that was a turning point where I sort of maybe started to put up a wall that, if this is what, church, and even though I had this experience with God, and I knew he was very real to me, I sort of put up this wall and started to say, well, I don't know that if this is what it's about, then...
Yeah. Because of church people?
Yeah.
Your dad? Isn't that huge? Like, I guess I'm cutting in, sorry,
no,
but that
okay.
just was huge to say that people can have a real experience with Jesus and then walk into the church, not Cornerstone, but Christianity, and get a bad experience from people.
Oh,
and,
absolutely.
like, that's so
maybe Cornerstone,
sad.
but the church in general.
Right, but I mean Christianity, like how much
Big
we
C
can
church.
affect even when people have something real, how if we're not careful, it's just
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So that's where I started to, so through that divorce, I remember even my dad having to ask me, because I was 15, I was of a certain age, he had to ask, did I want to live with him or my mom? And so having to make that decision is just a bad spot for a kid to be in. So just all of those things, I started to seek different ways. Well, I already had sort of one way that I was numbing out, and we talked about that a little bit earlier, how that's sort of your safe place that you go to, with the porn and masturbation, how that's kind of, it's always there.
Yeah.
It never lets you down. Well, initially.
Yeah.
It's consistent.
Yeah.
It's always something you can go to. So that's sort of what I used. And then when I was 15, of all places, on a youth trip, those same youth trips that I went on and got filled with the Holy Spirit and had a passion, there was a couple kids that had brought some weed and pills and stuff like that. And I started trying some of that stuff. And
Smoking weed on a church trip?
On a church trip.
What?
Yeah. The
On a
first
church
What
trip.
kind of church kids are these?
Normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyday church kids.
Everyday church kids.
Yeah, the first place I bought marijuana was in a church bathroom.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
Not really.
That's awesome.
so anyhow,
Happy for that.
Chris is gonna be going to that.
Hands up.
so I really started to just and I liked that experience of being high and sort of just not having to think about really what's going on. I mean, it's kind of it's an escape, know, and
It's not reality.
It's not, and so I kind of made a decision. There wasn't a time that I said this, but looking back on it, there was a time that it was just kind of like, well, what can I do to just feel good,
Yeah.
So that's what I started to do. Anything I could do to get a high. We would, a buddy of mine would still like cough syrup from the, drugstore and drink a bunch of it and, just get real high, and so anything we could do to sort of, get a high.
Have that momentary.
Yeah.
Well, when you lose that moral compass, what does it matter?
Why not?
Why
And once
do
you
everything
cross
you
one
can to feel
line, the
good?
next one is easy to cross.
Right.
Like,
Right.
yeah.
And so literally that's where I went is, I finally went to the place where if I do, die, or if I do, a lot of people think, well, what were you thinking? You could have died doing some of these things.
You
Like,
should have died.
I should have died.
should have
Exactly.
died.
Some of the things that we did, I had friends that died from. So the drugs just got worse and worse. When I got older, well, sophomore year, I got asked to leave my
Kicked out.
private school.
You didn't get the Christian
Kicked out.
attitude.
No, I didn't.
He's not getting any accolades now.
I got deported that year. So went to public school, and of course that opened up a whole new world of possibilities for my escape.
Yeah.
And so just started doing harder drugs, and I never I never shot up heroin or anything like that, but pretty much anything else I could do. I loved the hallucinogens, so anything I could do to trip, because that was just totally, takes your mind.
Yeah, you escape.
Yeah.
Completely.
You escape.
Yeah.
And so I loved doing that. It was just, something you could do to have a great time and sit right where you were,
And were you promiscuous as well?
No, in my mind, yes.
Yeah.
See, here's the thing. I look back and I say that God blessed me with no game. Because
No game.
because there was another element where, and this is another point that I think was, sort of, I took it as took it hard. I never could get a girlfriend through, school. I never, all my friends were, especially in high school, they were making out and having sex and had girlfriends, and I'm like, I'm missing out on all
me
this.
too.
Yeah.
Totally did that last
So it was this whole thing of, well, something's wrong with me because, a girl might like me first and then she talks to me and is like, that guy's kind of weird. So, probably tripping and stuff doesn't help you have a lot of good games. So anyhow, that was another point of just, it was difficult for me. I felt a lot of a rejection from it, in other words.
Yeah.
And even, in church and youth group, even before I really started getting into the drugs, I really have, feel like I have a lot of wounds from that, just rejection, and wanting to, be in a relationship, which a lot of that is probably a bad expectation, Well,
and I'm sure it probably pushed you further into pornography,
right,
and drugs and everything else, because over here this is bad,
right,
over here this is great. So I can't. This is not working out. So I'll just spend more time here.
Exactly. So, I had no game. So you asked, was I promiscuous? No, I wasn't.
Not for lack of trying.
Right, but not for lack of trying. So.
Hey, baby, I lost my number. Can I borrow yours?
Right, exactly. Yeah. In fact, I had this thing called the Chictionary, and it was this collection. I would collect girls' numbers, because that was something that I had. Like, look how many numbers I got.
I don't talk to any of them, but I got all these numbers.
So I had a Chictionary, so that was something I had going for me, I guess, So I continued to get deeper into, drugs and alcohol was sort of a part of it as well. It wasn't, I never was as much into that, but anyhow, I continued, and eventually when I was 18, if you push hard enough and if you try hard enough, you can sort of thwart, the Holy Spirit. Yeah. You can grieve the Holy Spirit. You can have your own way,
Yeah.
And so I think, for a long time, I see it as God's hand upon my life, keeping me from a lot of things, because there were situations that I should have been promiscuous. I should have been, but it just didn't happen.
Yeah.
Finally, when I was 18, and it makes me sick to think about it, but a group of us were hanging out at this apartment, and we had sort of this orgy, and that's how I lost my virginity to some girl that was, I don't even know her name. She was older than me. I don't know. And it's embarrassing. It's sick. Mm-hmm. That's how I lost my virginity. And that was when I was 18. And then it still wasn't like I was on this rampage. I mean, it was still, I would try to get involved with a girl, and it wouldn't work out. So, but at some point I did meet a girl who wasn't as involved with the party scene or the drugs, and I sort of traded one thing for another, because we started. That was my first sort of more serious relationship, and I didn't really appreciate her for her. I was just she was giving me what I wanted, and I was taking it. So we were sort of, I guess, playing house. We never moved in together or anything like that, but so I sort of started spending more time with her and getting away from some of the drugs. I was still smoking pot and stuff like that, which was something I did for 5 years continuously every day, like we drink coffee. Yeah. I mean, that was my... but I started sort of getting away from all that, spending more time with her, and we started going to church, not because we were seeking God, but just kind of, that's a cliche thing you do on Sunday. You go to church and
especially
go see
in the Bible Belt, which is where we're at.
This is what good Southern people do.
Right.
You go to church, you go to lunch afterward.
Yeah.
Yeah, at a nice restaurant.
Yeah, and then you go home
And you
then,
go smile and
then
go right back to
Monday you go right back to your life. But
Right.
then on Sunday, let's do it again. 'Cause
Right.
It looks good. It looks real good.
Makes
Yeah.
you feel good.
Yeah.
You can check it off.
Yeah. So it happened to be a very Pentecostal church.
Ooh.
And so I grew up Nazarene, and then when I was about 10, went to the Baptist church until
Where you
I was
accidentally got filled with the Holy Spirit.
accidentally did. And then by the time I was 15, 16, I was totally out of church. Or I might go to church, but I'd be, high as a kite, and so we were going to this Pentecostal church, and and it was quite an experience. I mean, there were people hooping and hollering and rolling in the aisles, and just really scary, especially for someone who's never, not quite to the snakes, but they were right there. They were right there.
I might be related to
Yeah.
I've been to that church.
Yeah. So, but even through that, I didn't, I wasn't compelled by necessarily the teaching. I don't know I do know what I was compelled by. The Holy Spirit was drawing me near. But at the time, I just knew there was this feeling of what I now know as conviction.
Yeah.
And, I'd grown up in church, and I had passion for God before. So I knew, I recognized the Holy Spirit. I still had that recognition. So I sort of, became uncomfortable and said, I've either got to quit going to church and listening to this and put myself in this environment, or I've got to stop, having sex with this girl that I don't really love. And so, I had that sort of discussion with her, and she sort of, okay. That's, kind of agreeing half-heartedly from my perspective. And so we broke up and got back together a couple times, and then through that we started going to Cornerstone, which was kind of a random thing. I had gone to Cornerstone maybe a year or two before that. Well, the first time I went to Cornerstone was me and a girl were making out in the parking lot, and
That was his first drive on Cornerstone.
that was my first time, just because it was
Who comes to a church parking lot to make out?
It is conveniently located to the interstate.
Apparently, this guy.
So I knew where Cornerstone was, and
I think did we? Yeah, we did. Okay, cool.
so I knew where Cornerstone was, and I don't remember exactly why the girl I was dating and I went, but for some reason we started going there, and had a good experience, and started getting plugged in, and that's really what helped me. I got involved with a group of guys that we would meet every once a week and have a Bible study, and that's really what gave me the strength to break ties. I was telling them what I was involved with, what I was doing, and they were able to sort of coach me through that and say, it's not right, number one, but you can get away from it. Long story short, and so
help hold you accountable to trying to move in the right direction.
Right. So that's ultimately what helped me, because I'm the type of person that will, clinically they call it codependency. So I'm the type of person that will do something that I hate just to please somebody else. Mm-hmm. So this girl that I didn't love and was just with, I would have probably been willing to stay with just to not make her upset.
Yeah.
Just growing up wanting to please, and that I think goes back to, some things with my dad, some things with my childhood where I was just wanting to please.
Yeah.
And so, where was I?
Cornerstone.
Cornerstone.
Group of guys.
Group of guys. Monday nights. Bible studies.
Right. So eventually I was able to dissolve that relationship, and really get plugged in to church, and things were going really well. I dated another girl during that time, which was, I mean, it was a pure relationship, but it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
And then Jennifer and I met, and
Did you remember each other when you met? From
Yeah,
when
I
you were
remember
younger?
the first time I saw Travis, I was actually there with my fiance, and I saw him in the old lobby of the worship center, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's Travis Haley, and he is so
He is
cute.
all grown up.
You don't have no game.
Like,
Just-
he is so
Oh, he is so harmless.
And I even remember, like, we would sit across the sanctuary from each other, like in the tiers, and I remember sitting beside my fiance, who would not sing, keep his arms down, just like grumpy grape to be there, honestly. And I would look across the sanctuary and see Travis, and Travis would like have his hands up, and he was and it was the first time really seeing Travis. I was like, there are guys who are not such a
Ding, 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 ding.
pill. I'll use that four-letter word. Who are not such a jerk, you know. I'm like, that's good guys, and like Travis, like worship. I'm like, really. It's like,
You can say douchebag on here. It's okay.
I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say. Never mind. I'm not gonna say it.
We say it all the time.
Right.
So I do remember like knowing, and I think I even told Stephanie, I was like, hey, I saw Travis Haley at church, because I'd been going there about a year before Trav came, and I kind of started seeing him around.
well, and then there was a specific time. I don't know if you ever heard the song "Pickup Man" by Joe Diffie. There's
Yes.
something women like about a pickup man.
Yeah.
But I was on the interstate and driving.
Oh yeah, this is crazy. Yeah, so I had seen Travis around church, and then we were on the interstate driving downtown, and this semi would not let me over, and I couldn't get over. So all of a sudden I see the little pickup in front of the semi, and his hands waving out like this, like, come on up. And I drive by, and I was like, that is Travis Haley. And he is the one who let me over on the interstate, and that was a Wednesday. And then that Wednesday night, we pulled into the church at the same time.
Oh
at
my
quarter,
gosh.
And I'm like, okay, God, what are you trying to tell me?
Still wasn't ready for a coupe to be.
What are you trying to tell me
Yeah,
about
yeah.
this Travis Haley, Lord? I keep running into him.
Do we need to break and restart?
Yeah, I was going to let
This
them
is
finish
great.
this
Okay.
part because it's good before we jump into y'all getting married and your next part of your story.
Yeah.
So is there anything else before we wrap this up before we jump into...
So you're aware of each other. You're
Yeah, we knew
noticing.
each other,
Right.
and we were hanging out, and we started doing stuff together as friends. And Travis does have no game. I had to invite myself on a date with Travis. Like, we were kind of hanging out and like clearly liked each
Yeah.
other. We were
This was
flirting,
after the
and yeah, I called off
wedding was
my
called.
engagement.
Okay.
So this was December
April.
of 2006. This was like March or April of 2007.
Yeah.
And we're clearly like flirting and stuff, and I'm like, he's never gonna ask me out. We're talking on the phone, and so we're talking on the phone. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna go with Jason, and we're gonna go to this event downtown at a church. It's like a youth, young adult night they have.
Yeah, Kairos.
And I was like, oh well, I can just ride with you. Travis was like, yeah, sure. I was like, okay, well, where can I meet you guys? I just was like, which is wrong now, but I was really, I gotta take control if I'm gonna do
And
anything.
he's like, oh, what's wrong with me?
And then my
your
sort of
program?
codependence
Alright.
kicks in. Like, well, yeah, okay.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
you can. I want to people please you.
Is this about the same time Travis had a little fro going on? About that same time frame?
He had at this point it was
That was later.
combed down, flipped up. Yeah, the fro was later.
Yeah.
So we started dating, and for a long time we were telling people like, no, we're just friends. We're just friends, and they were like, are you going places together? And we were like, yeah. And they're like, just you two? And we were like, yeah. And they're like, you're dating. I'm like, oh, okay. So we got together, started hanging out in April of 2007, got engaged in December of 2007, and got married in April 2008. So
Yeah.
we got married right at a year of officially kind of hanging out and getting
Right.
to know each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where we'll leave the first part of this. So in the second part, you can come back and listen next week for, the fairy tale.
The
rest of the story.
There's more. You need to tune back in.
There's more.
Yeah.
Be
You
sure-
need
be
to
sure
tune
come
Please.
back and listen to the second part of this. So, again, thank you guys. Even this first part, I know it's even hard to share that because it is hard, and I think we live in a culture where we don't want to talk about pornography. We don't want to talk about masturbation. We don't want to talk about those things because they're the things that for the most part, the church goes, oh, it's kind of dirty and gross,
know
and
what
I
they're
don't know what to do with it, so
Yeah, and
I'll pray for you.
Yeah.
we don't ever want to glorify what Satan did.
No.
But you're
But
right.
you want to glorify what he's doing
Yeah,
now.
you're right. Statistics would show in 2013 that 7 out of 10 people who call themselves Christians are looking at pornography weekly.
Yeah.
4 out of 10 women in the church are actively looking at pornography. 40% of the women who sit in our churches. So
And that doesn't even
And that
count in
was-
all the stupid romance novel,
No,
all the fantasy
and that was-
stuff.
and that was
read.
3 years ago, and that was only the women who admitted to it.
Yeah.
So it's a big hidden problem, and I just want to open. If nothing else, somebody can come to me
Yeah.
who's struggling. I'm not looking for everybody to brag or talk about. Maybe it's not everybody's calling. It is mine. God's letting me know He wants me to be a voice. But if nothing else, people can come to me if they're struggling. They can just know that there's hope, that they're not alone. That
Yeah.
And not just that, I think beyond those obvious issues, everybody has the same desire to be loved and to be wanted.
Yeah.
And the damage that can be done when you're a kid or circumstances you don't have any control over.
Yeah.
And that everybody's trying to plug that hole with something in
Yes.
their life. And we're all missing the same thing. We just don't know what to name
don't
it.
know.
Right.
I didn't know.
And so to be able to look at somebody's situation and know exactly what they need and try to help them figure out how to fill that hole with God, which is ultimately what's missing.
Yeah,
Right.
it
You know?
is.
Just it breaks my heart, and at the same time it's encouraging to know, like, the fact that you're working with youth. Maybe you can get a hold of a 6th grader or
Yeah.
a 7th grader who'll have a different perspective
Absolutely.
on that kid sitting next to him in class.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
Which is
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so
That's all.
tune back in next week, sundayeveningcoffee.com. Email us, sundayeveningcoffee@gmail.com, and we'll be back really in just about 5
5
minutes.
minutes.
But it's
We're
going
gonna
to be
take
next
a
week for
bathroom
you.
break.
So we'll see you in a minute. Thanks.